Bong Joon Ho's long-awaited follow-up to 2019's Best Picture winner Parasite is finally here. Mickey 17 is a sci-fi satirical comedy starring Robert Pattinson as the titular character, who works as an expendable, a clonable human partaking in fatally botched science experiments for the quote-unquote benefit of a colonization expedition. To escape his earthly debts, Mickey signs up as an expendable, along with a wacky crew including Yeun, Naomi, Ackie, Mark Ruffalo, Toni, Collette, and Tim Key. As of writing this video, on Monday, 10th of March, the film has made $53 million at the international box office, against a budget of around $120 million, meaning it would need to make between $230 million and $300 million to break even. Given the auteur-driven focus of this picture, those who wanted to see this film have already seen it. The issue has been bringing in casual audiences, and those who watched Parasite because of the hype are now long gone, because of the long delays, or simply aren't aware of the connection between these two films. Beginning pre-production in 2022, the film was originally slated for release in March 2024. However, due to the 2023 SAG strikes, the film was struck by continual delays and is finally here a full year later. Given Bong Joon Ho's stellar 2010s and peaking with Parasite, there are high expectations for Bong's return to the big screen. So, much like Mickey floating through space, does Bong land on his feet in this picture? So, I was very, very excited for Mickey 17. Parasite is probably one of my all-time favourite movies. I don't think it's a perfect movie. I think the second half sort of flails a little bit because it loses the character, or a lot of the character, of the house, which in my opinion is the best part of the movie. How Bong Joon Ho makes the house feel so alive, how he makes it feel lived in, is so masterful. It's excellent. It's great. It's really unique to that sort of picture. You know, over the course of the movie, you see less of anywhere else, and you only really see what he wants you to see, which is the house and the garden, and you know, the underground section. And I feel like as you sort of delve more into the basement, you lose a lot of that focus and a lot of that sort of, let's say, tightness around the house that was there in the first half of the film, particularly to the end of the first half of the film. It's still great. I love it. But going into Mickey 17, I had high hopes. I wanted to see how he sort of dealt with the theme of class struggle again, but in a completely different setting, in a completely different production, completely different script, completely different genre of film. And I have to say, I think the film is a mixed bag. I think he gets a lot of the casting spot on. I think he gets a lot of the satire spot on. But I feel like the script is extremely limited. I don't think that a lot of the plot is sort of naturally occurring. I think there are quite a few contrivances that he has. I think the budget is one thing that was way too big. It's, you know, far too much. It's ballooned from what it should be for a sci-fi picture of this nature. And I think that the film needed to be edited down a lot more than it is. I think this is a film that is clearly one of its main weaknesses is that it's struggling with the fact that it's just too long, and ultimately it should have either been made into a mini-series where it was able to better explore the ideas that it's discussing, or it should have been a tight 2-hour film, maybe less, that can just talk about one idea, and then that being the idea of multiples existing in this universe. But yeah, that's sort of my overall opinion on the movie, is that I think it's a bit of a mixed bag. I think that there are some elements to the film that is very charming, let's say, and then I think there are other elements where I think it's quite a big step back for Bong Joon Ho personally in terms of his editing, his script work. I think Parasite, you know, it's one of its biggest strengths is that the script is so immaculate, particularly that first half, with how the family, I'm not going to pretend to remember what the family is called, I can't lie to you, but particularly with how the family, you know, maneuvers to manipulate this rich family, a lot of that is based in Bong Joon Ho's script work, and it's tight, but it's tight in order to just give you the main details that you need to understand about why this family are doing this, why they believe it's necessary, and how this sort of manipulation that they're sort of undertaking is corrupting them, or were they just like this all along? That's sort of for you to make. I think in this film, he's sort of been allowed to do a lot more of whatever it is he wants to do. One thing that I will say is that I think he wrote this script based on the Wikipedia page and IMDb and things that I've seen. It seems that he wrote this film on his own based on the novel Mickey 7, whereas with Parasite he had a writing partner. So I wonder in some sense if maybe that wasn't the right direction for him, and that maybe he needed someone to bounce ideas off of. And now that's not me saying that he's not a perfectly capable writer in his own right. That is me saying everyone needs to bounce ideas off someone every once in a while. That's why a CEO has a vice president, so that they go, this is what I think we should do. Do you think it's right? The CEO has got there on their own merit, but sometimes they're still wrong anyways. And I think in this case, some of the things that Bong Joon Ho chooses to do with the script is actually the main issue with the film. So I think there's quite a few plot contrivances in the film that sort of hold it back for me, where, you know, maybe you'll spend a couple minutes, 5 minutes, where the film is discussing something, or a scene is sort of centering around this sort of, what would you call it, like an ex machina, or is it Deus Ex Machina? What am I thinking of? Sort of like like something that's like a nothing burger, I guess is the word I'm looking for, where it's the film is kind of telling you this matters for the scene, so pay attention to this, and then 5 minutes later that sort of is just gone. So the thing, and this is sort of a light spoiler, I guess, the film shows you that Stephen Yeun's character Timo is drug dealing, and that he has made this very profitable for himself. And then in the next scene, you know, Mickey 17, whilst he's in the prison cell, asks Timo to give him some of this oxycillin, and then that is used in order to help Mickey 17 and Mickey 18 escape. And then in the next scene, you see Naomi, Akkie's character, Nasha, high on the drug, and then that's it. That's all that you see of the drug, and it just never comes up again. It has no relevance actually to the main plot. It sort of just disappears into the ether. And this is my issue with the film, is that I feel like that happens a couple times. I think it actually happens a couple times with the characters even, where the film sort of introduces characters, doesn't give you much of a description. I don't think even gives you a name for a couple of them, and sort of goes like, oh, hey, this character is here, but they're not really important. They're just like a mindless worker, which thematically at the start of the film makes a lot of sense. I understand why it does that. And then the film shows you the same characters again and again and again. And then I'm going, okay, this isn't a meaningless character anymore. This is a main character. This is a main side character. And I don't know anything about this character's motivations. I don't know why this character is here. And that doesn't really work for me. You've elevated this from like a prop character who sort of just fills a thing of like, oh, workers are mindless and they're not treated right, to, oh, it's a main character in your story and you just aren't telling me about any of their motivations. So this happens with the scene when one of the characters is attempting to sleep with Mickey. You don't really see any of her motivations for that, other than, oh, she wants to sleep with him because he's like an expendable and she thinks that's interesting and sexy. That just doesn't fit the narrative, and I actually think this is my example of why I think it would be better fitting for a miniseries, where there are a lot of these threads that the film attempts to pulls out slightly for 5 or 10 minutes and then just disappears. And at the end of the film, that same character then has a girlfriend that has been cloned through the same printing system as what Mickey has been cloned through. And that, in my opinion, is quite confusing, because the film is saying, oh, we're getting rid of this, but then it's cloned that character. But then also that's him, her girlfriend was attempting to sleep with Mickey 17, and you're there going, well, I don't understand what's going on. I don't understand what any of these characters' motivations are. I don't understand what it is that they want. You're sort of just going like, oh, they're here, then they're there. And I think 10 episodes, 10 one-hour episodes would make more sense in that scenario, because you would have more time to flesh these side characters out. You would have more time to go, oh, well, they're doing this in episode 1, but then by the end of episode 10, they're completely different people. And then something like that would make more sense. Whereas in this film, it's sort of about 40 minutes that those two scenes occur, where she tries to sleep with Mickey 17, and then by the end of the film, she's got a girlfriend. It's like 40 minutes, and there's just no real, like, evolution of that character, because she's a side character and she isn't given any time to evolve in the final act of the film. So the film's main drawback to me is just how it wants to be expansive, but it doesn't want to be so expansive that they just made a TV show. Bong Joon Ho principally wants to work in movies, but the script that he's developed isn't good enough or tight enough to be a movie. It's expansive enough that it should have just been turned into a full-fledged series. And that's what I don't understand here, is, you know, with studios so hot to make these big production TV shows, why was this the one that was made into a movie? And I'm assuming that, I think the decision on that has came from Warner Brothers itself, where Warner Brothers over a series of years has attempted to pursue more autoristic filmmaking. That's why they've got James Gunn at the head of DC. That's why they brought Todd Phillips in for the Joker movies, and that's why they've got Matt Reeves heading up his the Batman trilogy with Robert Pattinson as well. Now, that's all good and well, but then giving a start-up sci-fi show to a Korean director who only had one big picture outside of Korea 6 years ago, £120 million or dollar budget, that's destined to fail, because you haven't acted quick enough on the hype of Parasite, partly as a result of COVID. Alright, that's not your fault. But then the 2023 delays as a result of the strikes, where you refused for about 6 months to pay these actors what they deserved, and even going back to the WGA strike, writers what they deserved as well. Although I'm not sure that affected this production, because Bong Joon Ho, I would assume, isn't part of the Writers Guild because he's Korean. I would assume they've got their own union, if any, but I don't know enough about that, so don't quote me on that. Because you refuse to do that, you haven't gone, well, this budget needs to come down and it needs to shrink so that we can still make a profit. You've gone, well, we need this auteur, so we're just going to stick with it, because what else can we do? And that's a bad bet. I understand what they're going for, and I think it's the correct move. I just don't think they've conducted themselves in the correct way. They're also, as I've seen, or from what I've seen, there hasn't been enough marketing from the director of Parasite. That film you watched 6 years ago, that you loved, that film that was the first ever movie that you watched that wasn't in English, about the family that was crazy manipulative. Yeah, that guy's doing another movie, except it's in English. How can't you sell that? That's such an easy thing to sell. I could sell that. And I'm not a marketer. I don't know anything about that. So I don't understand how this failed. And, well, I understand from the point of the budget, because the budget is too big for original sci-fi. Original sci-fi doesn't sell very well. You start off with a small budget for original sci-fi, you market it very well, and then you build out in sequels. It's your second and third film in the sci-fi genre that will do very well. This isn't original horror movies where, you know, people will go and see dumb slapstick horror movies all day long, because that's a Valentine's Day movie, that's a one-off day sort of thing. people don't go to see sci-fi movies as a one-off. This is a largely male genre, and you struggle to sell it even to a lot of men because they want to see Alien, they want to see E.T., Terminator, Star Wars, Star Trek. They want to see this stuff. They don't want to see new stuff a lot of the time. So you made the correct bet. You just made too big of a bet. And it's really troubling to me that this failed, because I'm worried that they're going to go, oh, this doesn't work, we need to pull back. Although, admittedly, I'm not sure they can do that in some instances. They definitely can't pull out the Matt Reeves Batman trilogy now because it was too much of a massive success. They've already pumped too much money into James Gunn's DC universe to pull out of that. So who loses out in this sort of slate? If it's not those two guys, who else loses in the Warner Brothers slate? I'm not too sure what else is coming up, but I would have to imagine that someone on the more altruistic side of filmmaking is going to lose out, because they're going to say, well, we just don't have the money for this, or we don't think that this original idea is going to work. So yeah, that worries me in some sense. But let's get back to some of the film. The environment of the film really disappointed me. You know, when you come out of a film like Parasite, which is the most unique thing about it, is, again, how alive he makes the environment feel, how alive he makes the setting feel. And then the entire movie, or the entirety of Mickey 17, is just kind of bland. It just looks like generic sci-fi fiction. There's nothing that is like, oh, that's original, that pops out on the screen. And I'm not talking about original ideas that pops out on the screen. I'm talking about the ship, the planet, the alien race that they encounter. None of it is unique. It just looks like everything you've seen before. It's all grey. It's all, they go to an ice planet, it's all just ice. There's nothing that, like, you go, oh, that's a draw. There's nothing about it that they could sell as like, wow, look at this looks really cool. Even one of the biggest annoyances for me was how bland the alien race is, and it becomes more and more obvious towards the end of the film, because the film, you know, its climax is with the alien race coming out in their thousands, and they all just are the same, you know, copy and paste creature, and some are bigger than others, some are smaller than others. And that's just such a strange decision to me, because, again, this is sci-fi. Clearly you had a budget to do whatever you wanted with, and you just chose to kind of repeat, like copy and paste, rinse and repeat the same character over and over again. So I thought that was very disappointing. I think, you know, one of Bong Joon Ho's strongest attributes is how he utilizes the environment and makes it a character in and of itself. So how does this feel so unalive? How does this feel like the characters have just been put in this scenario for the sake of it? So I was very disappointed by that. The acting, I think the acting of this film is very good. I think Robert Pattinson as a scene stealer, he really shows off his comedic chops that I don't think was necessarily well known before this. He shows a lot of range in terms of being the angry, stoic character, and then also being the goofy, light-hearted character. One of my main issues that I really didn't like about this film, though, does come between Robert Pattinson's two characters, where by the end of the film, Mickey 18 is willing to die for Mickey 17, whereas at the start of their interaction, Mickey 18 wanted to kill 17 because he thought he was a dweeb. He thought he would replace him, or he would just get in his way. So he was like, yeah, I'm going to kill you, whatever. And by the end of the film, you're meant to believe that they've formed this sort of relatable brotherhood between the two of them. And it just isn't there. It doesn't work. Yeah, so I struggled a lot with their sort of relationship. I think, again, it's just another plot contrivance that I had to mention because I just don't think it makes very much sense. Everyone else in the film I think is pretty good. I think the standout for me was actually Stephen Yeun, which I know people really like Mark Ruffalo's character. I know Toni Collette's character or Toni Collette's performance is one that people also talk about a lot, but I think there's something charming about Stephen Yeun in this film to me. He's, doesn't have a lot of screen time, but he is very funny. And this is another one of the issues to me about how they pull on a lot of threads but they don't finish it, is acting performances like Stephen Yeun. They're very good, but he only really gets about 3 scenes to sort of like show you what he's working with and to show you like how good of an actor he is, and then he's sort of like just gone, and then it just very quickly wraps up his storyline in about 20 seconds at the end. And I just don't think that's very fair on what he's doing here, because I think it's a very good performance. And even, even Naomi, Akkie's character, Nasha, I don't think a lot of her motivations in the film make a lot of sense. She's meant to be this, all-encompassing authority figure. She's a soldier, a firefighter, and a police officer. But then by the end of the film, she completely disobeys authority and sides with the working class. Which, okay, I think there's probably some element of, the banding together of different classes of people against the one all elite class. There is a good sort of or some semblance of a message there, but again, you didn't really work at it to really show me that that's what you were going with. And so I struggled with her character as well, and I struggled with Stephen Yeun's character, and I just wanted to see more of them, and I don't think that having more of them would have held them back. I think it would have allowed them to prosper into more lovable characters than what it is you actually see of them. And then a lot has been made about Mark Ruffalo's performance, about it being based, or somewhat being based on Donald Trump. I have read from Bong Joon Ho that he said none of the characters are based on active politicians, so I have to take him on his word about that. I think Mark Ruffalo himself has came in and changed the performance, or adapted his own interpretation of the script into being that he's based his own performance around Donald Trump to some extent. I think there probably is some truth in that. However, I'm not very interested in the sort of quote-unquote controversy around it, because it's not a real controversy in my opinion. It's just, manufactured Twitter garbage. The scene of Mark Ruffalo getting shot in the head, or attempted to get shot in the head, that wasn't filmed 6 months ago around the time of the election. That was filmed 2 years ago. So that's just kind of bullshit. The one thing that I will say about Mark Ruffalo's character, and I'm not sure if this came before or after Poor Things, I'm not sure which he shot first, but they feel incredibly close to me. It feels like he's doing this sort of almost like a original and a sequel of the same character, and he's probably going to wrap it up in a trilogy of some sorts with maybe, I don't know, fucking Christopher Nolan or something, where he'll just like be this guy going back in time. And it's just sort of, I don't know, J.D. Vance inspired, but he'll be doing the same voice as these other 2 movies. And so I wasn't as much of a fan of the Mark Ruffalo character as everyone else's. I think it's fine. I just think it's too close to Poor Things for me. I've seen the character before, and I've seen him do it better as well. The Toni Collette character, I think she's very good. Again, I think it's quite similar to Knives Out, although there's a lot more sort of distance between the 2 performances, so I don't really have as much of an issue about that. I just think she's better in Knives Out than she is in this, to be honest with you. So the acting overall, I think it's very good. I think the casting, they got it perfect. Other than maybe I would have wanted to see someone who did a different interpretation of the script than Mark Ruffalo. But that's not because of the Donald Trump stuff. That is just because I think it's too close to his Poor Things character. And then finally, the final aspect that I'll hit on is Bong's directing is still pretty good. I think my issue with him in this film is more the scripting and the editing, which, that is obviously part of the directing as well. I think there is a lot of questionable decisions around this in terms of what he chose to include and what he chose to not cut out. And I think that there needed to be a lot more refinement in terms of cutting stuff that is good, but that doesn't enhance the actual narrative of the film. And I understand that he got into a heated argument with Warner Brothers over a month or whatever that led to one of the delays, where he was saying, no, I do have creative control. We're putting out my cut of this film. And this is actually one of those instances where I think it would have actually benefited by a producer coming in and going, well, this is what we need to cut out because it's not relevant to the film. And this sort of shows you that, just giving creative control to directors or, the cast or the editor or whatever isn't always the best decision. Sometimes you need a studio, you need a producer to come in and go, well, actually, not all of this is relevant or isn't relevant to our main theme, which is one of the main issues with the film, is that it doesn't know what its main theme is. Is it the multiples? Is it the dictatorship between Mark Ruffalo and Toni Collette? Is it, the colonization of this planet that is going to uproot this race of creatures? What is the main thing here? Or is it the class struggle of the individual? Is it class struggle between the collective? What is it? There's no focus. There's no real focus here. And, someone coming in who isn't part of Bong Joon Ho's, close-knit team and saying, this is what you need to cut out in order to make this film better, would have greatly enhanced the film, in my opinion, even if it meant you needed to lose 20-30 minutes of the film. And again, it's all pretty good stuff on its own. It's just when you put it together, I don't think it makes a very convincing film, in my opinion. But overall, to close out, I think this is a very enjoyable, satirical, acceptable and inoffensive look at class struggle, and to some extent, probably a look at Hollywood itself as this sort of industry that, operates as almost a dictatorship in some way and takes advantage of workers as they see fit, and doesn't really view them as individuals. They just view them as, things that they can just pick up and throw around and then get rid of when they break. It's acceptable, it's funny, there are good performances in it, the camera work is pretty excellent, I would say, but it's not anything that is up to scratch of Bong Joon Ho's previous work. It's not something that is up to scratch of even his last film. And, I understand people saying, well, he's just won a Best Picture Oscar in the last half decade. Maybe he doesn't want to go down that super serious route, or maybe he doesn't want to go down the route of pursuing that sort of acclaim again. He wants to do something more light-hearted. He wants to do something that isn't maybe that highbrow, and I would understand that. But personally, from a guy who we can clearly see what he's capable of, I at least would have expected a comedy that was better than this, because it is good, but do I really expect good from Bong Joon Ho is my issue. But yeah, overall, enjoyable. I'm looking forward, as always, to whatever it is that Bong Joon Ho does next. I'm hoping it's outside of Hollywood. I'm hoping he returns to his Korean roots and that he sort of stays away from Hollywood, in my opinion. I don't think these major budgets and these major sci-fi epics really fit him as much as I think Parasite fits him. I know that he has done films like The Host and Memories of Murder that are very popular, but in my opinion, I want to see something that is more like Parasite. And if it's a sci-fi picture that has working class themes, as this does, that's fair enough. The issue with this film, or one of the issues with this film, is the sci-fi itself just isn't very good. But yeah, that's my opinions. I'm going to let you go. Thank you for listening. If you made it this far, see you later. Bye.